have made a yurt. Okay, so that's all sewn up. Time to do the middle. The first one of these I used this worsted weight yarn for the inner layer because I thought I would be able to thread my beads onto this finer yarn and knit that for the final layer, but I found my beads would not go on this yarn. So when I did this geode with a zipper, I used this yarn for the inner layer. I also used mercerized cotton instead of that fuzzy yarn because I didn't want the fuzz to get stuck in the zipper. So this geode is all sort of slick fibers and nothing fuzzy. Also, this yarn is 100% corn. This is 100% cotton, and it is really linty. So I'm going to not use the worsted. I'm going to use this more of a DK weight yarn, which is almost the exact same pattern as the outside with the number 4 needles. The pattern I wrote is for worsted, but it's really going to be trial and error depending on how your gauge is, depending on how tight you're knitting. So use whatever you have on hand because it's not going to take very much. It's no point going out buying yarn just to do this geode. So the inner layer is going to be just like the outer layer. Start with a Turkish cast on and knit the same increases and everything, but just stop 6 stitches farther in. I think what I'm going to do is the same number of stitches as the inner layer because as I was sewing this up, the inner one was a little bit too small. You know, I wanted it to be a little bit smaller than the outer, but I had to sort of push the knit stitches together so they're not as stretched out as they probably could be. So I will not do 6 stitches fewer. I'm going to do this number. Here's the Turkish cast on again, wrapped 3 times. Start with a knit 1, 2, 3, turn, take away the slip knot. Knit 1, 2, 3. Alright, that's a cast on. Alright, that's the first row. I'm going to make one right. This corn yarn is quite splitty. I think I got it that time. Okay, first needle. Find the right loop, it's that one. This layer will be completely hidden under the beads. My emphasis on knitting it tight with this kind of increase that doesn't make holes is purely to keep the beanbag stuffing inside. If you're not planning to use any beanbag stuffing, then you can knit this with yarn overs probably, it'll be fine. But I want it to be sort of tight enough to keep those little plastic pellets inside. Alright, now that's the first increase row, and now I just do a knit row and keep going, and the next one it will be knit 2, make 1 left, and then the row after that will be a knit row, and then make 1 right, knit 3, and so on. I've knit most of this section, and I'm trying to decide how many rows to knit. This doesn't seem to be quite enough yet. I'd rather it be bunched up than not really go all the way to the bottom. So I'm going to do a few more. The first one I did, I had to go all the way to the cast off and fit it inside to see that it was way too big, and then I had to frog it back and make it smaller. But that's fine. If you have to take it apart to make it come out right, that's worth it. Okay, this looks good. Let's bind off. Alright, that's that bound off. I'm going to give myself a long tail for sewing together. Pull that through. And then once again I'm going to finish that last stitch so that I have a nice neat circle all the way around. So I'm going to go into this stitch. And back into there, right where it came from. And there's my nice chain stitch edge. And this should fit, cross fingers, right into here. Good. Now the first thing I want to do is take this tail from the underside, thread this tail on a needle, and stitch it up right through the middle of the bottom section. Join the middles. I've still got this tail. I'm going to put this tail up through the middle as well. Go off to the side a little bit. Alright, so now that's both tails on the inside. I can pull this one up to cinch that down into the inside. Now I'll have this to work with and this to work with for securing the next layer. Now I'm going to thread the purple tail on the needle and secure the contrast color layer. Now that I have this stitching started, I want to add some beanbag filling in between these layers. I don't think that's enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more. When I did the double geode, I weighed out the beans because I had to get it the same in both halves. But since I'm only doing one of these, it doesn't really matter. I don't have to replicate it. I've decided I don't like this. I don't like the way this edge sticks out more than it's just pulled in too much. I want it to flare out more. I think that's because my middle layer of knitting was small. If I'd bound that off with a size larger needle, then I think this would turn out better. So I'm going to take this apart and I'm going to redo the bind off on the purple layer and the light gray to make them stretch out more, and I'm going to resew this again. One of the drawbacks of ripping back when you've sewn stuff with this corn yarn, apparently it can't handle the pulling back through all those stitches, so it has I've had a failure of my yarn tail. So I'm going to have to start with a new piece of yarn to sew this back on again after I rework it. But I think it's better than having something I've worked on this many hours not turn out right. So I'm going to keep going. I've reduced my geode back to its component parts, and I undid the bind off on the light gray layer, and then I knit that yarn on a third round so that I could join some more yarn and have it be hidden. So this is the end of the original tail, and this is a new piece of yarn that I knit in, and now I'm going to knot it on the inside, and this will be down inside the geode. But this will give me a fresh yarn for a bind off. That'll be the part that shows. So this part will be down inside. And now I'm ready to bind off with my new piece of yarn, and I'm going to go up to a size 8 needle for the bind off, and that should give me enough slack that it will stretch out to fit this piece of edge. And see, this piece is plenty big enough. It just got pulled in because the inside piece was small. So now I should have a more pleasing shape for this piece. Unlike the zipper geode, I don't really want it to go straight up. I want it to sort of flare out a little bit to make the edge look prettier. Working the bind off with a larger needle, just put the little extra yarn in every stitch. Here's the purple layer. I've taken the bind off out of this, and I've tried to pick up rip back stitches with the smallest needles I have. These are like 0s or 1s or something. I keep them on my desk just for this purpose. And I want to rip back a little bit more, so this is into the last row. I'm using my 4 needle. So I'm going to go back just a little bit farther so that I can add fresh yarn. Okay, I'll pick up another 4 and knit this a few stitches. The idea is to get the loops on the right size needle. And now I will start with the yarn from the ball. That's a messed up yarn. So here's the fresh tail from the ball. And I'll just start knitting with that. Now on the back side, I'm going to tie these together. This will be inside the geode, and with all the glass beads and stuff, you won't be able to feel these knots, hopefully. And by having it on the needle, it should stop it from cinching up too much. I can feel it flinching up a little because this thread is so slippery. I mean the yarn. Oops, and not very strong. But that's okay because that's the part I don't want anymore. So now I can go ahead to my bind off using fresh yarn from the ball, and then I'll have enough for making up the final product. So I'm going to use I think I'll use a 6 needle. I used an 8 to bind off the layer, the light gray layer, but I'm going to use a 6 to bind off this purple layer. I used a 4 before and it was too tight, so I'm just going in between the 6. So I'll bind this off and then I'll make up the edge again and see if it looks better. Well, I can really tell a difference between these standard anodized aluminum needles and the Teflon coated ones. The Teflon coated ones are much smoother through this corn yarn. This is better. I stitched this inner layer to the inside because because I added an extra row, it curled a lot more. And I kind of like the way it sort of makes a smoother transition of that edge. So that's going to be nice when this is stuffed out with something heavy. It should get a nice sort of geode shape. Now I can sew the inside back in and see how it's going to work out. This is making kind of a zigzag effect on the edge here. I found a better way to sew this inner layer. I need to go through each join of the stitches. Before I was just doing every other one and it made it zigzag. So now I'm going through each one twice. So I need this stitch to line up with that stitch. So I'm going to go through the front of it, and I'm going to go through both legs of the stitch below. Then I'm going to go back through the same stitch I just went through, and then that's going to capture the other joint of that stitch. So now I'll go through this stitch, and by working around like this, I should come out with all the stitches lined up. And the tension should be even all the way around. I'm happy that I've redone this. It seems to be a much better shape to me. It's more of an even cup shape, and it's lost some of that yurt quality. I think it's more of a good geode shape. You can see how stretchy it is now. And in the hand, when you squeeze it when it's got the beads in it, it'll have a nice feel to it. I'm not sure why that's necessary, but I don't know. I mean, if you're going to knit a geode, it might as well be different than a real geode, right? On to the last step, knitting these beads. I'm going to use regular polyester sewing thread. You don't cut it off, just thread a needle on it. You thread a needle. So this step is just to thread all the beads onto your needle and onto the thread. I have a variety of beads and I try to put them on in random order. I actually was running low, so I bought some more of just one kind. I think these are the new ones. They're pretty. This is how many beads I have on this thread compared to the size of the geode. That's probably about right, actually. I'll probably end up using all of those. Just like all the others, I'm going to do a Turkish cast on. Start with a slip knot. Gosh, I can't even tie a slip knot in thread. Start with a slip knot to keep it on the needle. And then it needs to be wrapped around the needle 3 times from back to front. Okay, that's 3 wraps. Then start knitting. I'm using number 2 needles for this. It's just the size that I happen to have handy. It's about the smallest size I have. I have those zeros that I use for picking up stitches. Kind of hard to tension thread to hold. Okay, I think I have 6 very loose, messy stitches. Let me pull the thread and it should tighten back up. If I pull both ends, I should have something workable. This is the tail. So I want to just keep knitting. I want to knit one more row before I start with the beads. And the increases. Okay, 1. I'm making you watch this torturous experience just as a warning. This is not easy. If you do all this work and then you get to this step and you get frustrated, don't say I didn't warn you. In fact, I might advise that you try this first, and if you can't handle it, don't start the other stuff. I don't have any particular skill, except that I'm stubborn. I will keep trying until I get it. I'll go ahead and tell you it's easier if you're not trying to hold your hands out under a camera. To add the beads to my work, I'm just going to sort of get some few inches worth and move them up. Got this upside down. Okay. Now I can try to knit. I want to knit a stitch and put the needle, when I pick up the loop, I want to put it between beads. So I'll just do these 6 with beads, and then I'll do some increases. Oops. See, I want to pick up the thread between 2 beads like that and knit it. Try not to drop the stitch. Okay. So that's 3 stitches and 3 beads. Just still on 2 needles because I can barely hold on to them. If I tried to go up to 3, I would drop it for sure. Okay, let's try the next 3 stitches. I'm having a hard time getting the tension so I can control what I'm doing. Yay! Alright, I got 6 beads, 6 stitches. Now it's time to do an increase, so I'm going to try again to get some tension on this thread. Now I want to knit and pick up the thread between the beads, and I'm going to do knit front and back for these increases. So on the back side of that same stitch, knit that as well with another bead. So I'm just going to do a knit front and back on all of the stitches. I find knit front and back is easier when knitting thread than any of the other increases. Yarn overs are pretty easy, but they also make your they're loose, and it kind of tends to make the needles drop. Okay, one more. I'm losing tension. Okay. Alright, so that's an increase row. I would figure out how to hold this tension. I can do this a lot better when I'm not trying to hold my arms out under the camera. I think the harder something is for me to do, the more I'm inclined to pull my arms up to my face. Try an extra wrap around my pinky finger. Alright, so the other side, knit front and back. Knit front. Oops. Back. Alright, can't get that back stitch. I'm going to knit the front again. Knit front and front. Does that count? Can't do it. Okay, so now I've got, I should have 12 stitches. Now I'll try to knit onto an extra needle, so I'll have 3 needles to work with. So I should end up with 4 stitches per needle after this step. I'm not doing any increase, this is just a knit round. Okay, that's 4 stitches on that needle. I'll pick up another needle and knit the next 4 onto that needle. 5 stitches on there and 3 on the next one. That's not really what I meant to do, but I can adjust that on the next go around. I don't want to try to move a stitch on these needles. Okay, there's 3 needles. Now I'll do another increase round. This time I want to knit 2 stitches and then do an increase. So I will do knit 2. I guess what I really need to do is do a knit 1, knit front and back, because the increase will be, that's like knitting 2. This is the back of that second one will be my make 1 left. And knit 2 more. And make 1 left, I'm going to interpret as the knit back. Okay, the next needle, I need to do knit 1, front and back. I'll have to move this one to this needle. So knit 1 and knit front and back. So the next round will just be a solid knit round. It's stuck on my finger. And but it's already starting to take shape. It doesn't look great. I mean, it looks kind of funky, but that's kind of okay. Because I have that inside layer of purple, this should just sort of, you should be able to see the thread. You'll just see the sparkles. I've knit all the way up to 48 stitches on my beaded section of the geode. And now I want to see if that's enough. I did, I think, 2 or 3 plain knit rows. But this is sort of a trial and error situation. That looks like enough to me. It seems to fill up the inside of the geode well. So I'm going to go ahead and bind off and then join this to the geode. I have a lot of beads left on my thread. I will have some to spare now. I'm going to put 1 bead in each stitch of the bind off. It's just a regular passover bind off like the others, but with a bead in each one. And then when I sew this to the knit part, the yarn parts, I'll put 1 bead. I'll actually run the thread through the bead and secure it to the knitted purple layer. Whoops. This is gonna, I dropped a stitch. Dropped 6 stitches on my last round. But I think I got that one back okay. My bead came out of that one, but I'm gonna just let it go. Alright, now let's see if I can pass this over without dropping a stitch. Alright, that's 1 bound off. So I'm going to keep going around carefully, trying not to drop stitches. Okay, that's bound off. I have the last loop here, and I'm going to do what I've done on all the other layers and cut a long tail. I have to get these beads out of the way. I'm going to use this tail to sew the beads to the geode, so that's why it needs to be so long. Okay, that looks good. I think just... Alright, now I can pull this all the way through. Capture that last. This last bead's going to want to fall off though, so I might make a find a needle. I'll thread the needle on the thread and deal with this last bead. I'm going to just go through the next bead and sort of just secure a few of these. Do a little knot just in case something happens and I drop this, it doesn't go spraying beads everywhere. Okay, so there's my finished net of beads. It feels kind of cool. It doesn't look very perfect, but that's, you know, that's nature. So now I have some of these yarn tails in here that I'm going to need to pull through to the inside of this beaded thing. My yarn needle. Okay, now we'll start sewing this to the inside here. So I want to sew one bead per stitch because I have 48 stitches and I have 48 beads on here. So I'll just go through a bead, through a stitch. Here it is, the finished geode. Compare this one to the zipper geode. Here's the zippered one. I used white yarn on this one instead of gray. They're both good, I think. I made this one a little lumpier, kind of on purpose. This one I let it stay kind of smooth.